Stop scrolling right now. Welcome back to COINSX History US, the channel where hidden coins turn into real money. If you think pennies are worthless, this video is about to shock you. Today, we're revealing 3 of the most valuable wheat penny coins that collectors are desperately searching for right now, and some of them are worth thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars. These small copper coins look ordinary, but the right year, mint mark, or error can change your life overnight. Imagine finding one of these rare wheat pennies sitting in your old coin jar, wallet, or inherited collection. Sounds crazy. It's real and it happens more often than you think. Imagine holding a small copper coin that passed through the hands of factory workers, soldiers, shopkeepers, and families just after the most powerful war the world had ever seen. This is not just a penny, this is the 1946 wheat penny 1-cent coin. A silent witness to the moment when America stepped out of war and into a brand new future, and if you think a single cent cannot tell a massive story, then stay with me. Because this coin carries the sound of victory, the weight of sacrifice, and the hope of a nation rebuilding itself brick by brick, job by job, and dream by dream. The 1946 wheat penny was born in a world forever changed. World War II had just ended. Millions of soldiers were returning home. Factories that once built tanks and airplanes were now turning back to cars, refrigerators, and everyday goods, and the American economy was shifting from survival to growth. The wheat penny design, created by Victor David Brenner decades earlier, was still in circulation, showing Abraham Lincoln on the front, a symbol of unity, leadership, and endurance, and on the back the 2 wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent, a design that represented America as an agricultural, industrial, and moral powerhouse. In 1946, copper itself carried deep meaning. During the war, copper had been rationed and redirected to ammunition, wiring, and military equipment. So when the war ended, the return to normal coin production symbolized peace, stability, and continuity. The 1946 wheat penny was struck in massive numbers at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints because the nation needed coinage to fuel everyday commerce. People were spending again, businesses were opening again, and money was moving fast through a rapidly awakening economy. Every one of these pennies jingling in pockets and cash drawers told the story of normal life returning to America. Soldiers used them to buy coffee, mothers used them at grocery counters, kids used them for candy and comics, and collectors decades later would hold them, wondering about the hands that once spent them. The Philadelphia Mint struck the majority of 1946 wheat pennies, with no mint mark, producing hundreds of millions of coins. Denver added a D-mint mark below the date, creating a slightly scarcer but still widely circulated issue, while San Francisco struck fewer coins marked with an S, making those examples more desirable today. Especially in higher condition, the condition of a 1946 wheat penny matters greatly because most were heavily used, circulated, worn, and passed along without thought. Pennies were everyday money, not treasures, yet hidden among the worn brown copper surfaces are coins with sharp details, blazing red color, and near-perfect strikes, and those are the pieces collectors hunt today. A fully red, uncirculated 1946 wheat penny can be worth many times more than face value, not because of rarity alone, but because of survival. The survival of original mint color after decades of handling is rare, and that rarity drives value. Errors also play a major role in the legend of the 1946 wheat penny. Off-center strikes, die cracks, double dies, and other mint mistakes transform an ordinary cent into a collectible prize. These errors remind us that even in massive industrial operations, humans and machines were not perfect, and each mistake created a one-of-a-kind historical artifact. The wheat penny era itself was nearing its end, though no one knew it yet. Just 12 years later, in 1958, the wheat design would be retired, replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse, making every wheat penny, including the 1946 issue, part of a closed chapter in American coinage history, a chapter that spanned 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and the rise of the United States as a global superpower. When you study a 1946 wheat penny, you are not just studying metal, you are studying post-war optimism, returning soldiers starting families, the baby boom, suburban expansion, and the foundation of modern America. This coin circulated during the early days of the Cold War, when hope and fear coexisted, when America was proud, confident, and cautious all at the same time. It is a small artifact with a massive story, a story of recovery, resilience, and renewal, and that is why the 1946 wheat penny still matters today, why collectors search rolls, why historians reference it, and why a simple 1-cent coin can still command attention, curiosity, and respect. So the next time you see a worn brown penny from 1946, remember it once lived in a world rebuilding itself, and in its quiet copper way it helped carry America forward into a new era. As we go deeper into the story of the 1946 wheat penny, we begin to understand how deeply connected this coin is to everyday American life. In the immediate post-war years, inflation was beginning to rise, wages were adjusting, and the average American family was learning how to live in a world without ration books. Again, pennies mattered because every cent mattered. People counted change carefully, and the wheat penny was part of nearly every transaction, from streetcar fares to corner store purchases. The sound of copper pennies sliding across wooden counters became the sound of recovery and confidence returning to the nation. The Lincoln portrait on the obverse carried extra meaning. In 1946, Lincoln represented unity after division, strength after struggle, and moral leadership during uncertain times. His image reminded Americans of sacrifice and perseverance, values they had just lived through on a global scale. The engraving style itself, simple, strong, and timeless, reinforced the seriousness of the era. This was not flashy money. This was honest working money made to serve a rebuilding nation. The reverse wheat ears symbolized abundance and growth, something Americans desperately wanted after years of scarcity. Wheat was food security, prosperity, and stability. And even though the country was becoming more industrial, the wheat design still honored the agricultural roots that fed the nation through war and peace. Metallurgy also plays a role in the fascination of the 1946 wheat penny, made primarily of copper, with small amounts of tin and zinc. The coin has aged differently depending on storage and environment. Some toned deep chocolate brown, others developed warm golden hues, and a lucky few retained bright red mint luster. Collectors today classify these colors carefully because color directly impacts value. A red-brown coin tells one story, while a fully red coin tells another story of preservation and chance storage away from moisture, heat, and handling. Mint state examples are especially prized because they show how the coin looked when it first left the presses in 1946. Sharp wheat lines, crisp lettering, and strong Lincoln details. These coins feel like time capsules frozen in the moment of America's post-war rebirth. The Denver and San Francisco issues add another layer of narrative. Denver pennies often show strong strikes reflecting improvements in minting technology, while San Francisco coins sometimes display weaker strikes, making high-grade examples more challenging. To find this variation gives collectors endless reasons to study, compare, and search rolls, hoping to uncover a survivor that escaped decades of circulation. Era coins from 1946 deepen the mystery even further. Imagine a die crack forming during long production runs, or a misaligned blanket slipping into place. Each error created under pressure and speed tells us how hard the mints were working to meet national demand. Double dies especially fascinate collectors because they show subtle shifts during die creation and require careful examination. Under magnification, finding one is like discovering a hidden message from the mint floor, a quiet whisper from 1946 that not everything went exactly as planned. The 1946 wheat penny also circulated alongside major cultural changes. Radios dominated entertainment. Television was just beginning to appear. Automobiles filled highways, and suburban neighborhoods expanded rapidly. Children born during the baby boom would later grow up spending these very pennies on school lunches and movie tickets, unknowingly carrying history in their pockets. When the wheat penny design ended in 1958, many of these coins were still circulating, worn, thin, but reliable. And when they were finally pulled from circulation, they became souvenirs of a different America that counted pennies, valued thrift, and respected hard-earned money. Today, the 1946 wheat penny stands as a bridge between eras, between wartime sacrifice and peacetime prosperity, between old traditions and modern America. Collectors treasure it not because it is rare in raw numbers, but because it is rich in meaning. Every scratch, every worn edge is proof that this coin lived, worked, and traveled through a defining chapter of American history. And as long as people continue to search coin jars, estate collections, and old rolls, the story of the 1946 wheat penny will. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine holding a small brown copper coin that has passed through the hands of factory workers, farmers, soldiers, shopkeepers, and children more than 70 years ago. A coin that looks simple at first glance, yet quietly carries the weight of an entire nation rebuilding itself after the most destructive war in human history. This is the 1951 wheat penny, 1 cent, a coin born in a world balancing hope, fear, progress, and uncertainty. And today we are going to dive deep into its complete story, from the history of its design to the political and economic forces shaping its creation, to the minting process, the varieties, the errors, the metal composition, the survival rates, the collecting market, and why this single year stands as one of the most fascinating chapters in the entire Wheat Cent series. This is not just a penny. This is a time capsule from the heart of post-war America's story of the 1951 wheat penny begins long before the coin itself was struck, reaching back to the early 20th century when the United States decided for the first time to place a real historical figure on everyday circulating coinage in 1909 to honor the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Sculptor Victor David Brenner created a portrait that would become one of the most recognized images in American history. Lincoln's calm, steady gaze symbolized unity, strength, and moral leadership, qualities desperately needed during times of national challenge. And by 1951, that symbolism was more relevant than ever. The world was emerging from World War II. America was now a global superpower. The Cold War was intensifying, and the Korean War had erupted just 1 year earlier in 1950, making 1951 a year filled with tension, patriotism, and industrial momentum. When the 1951 wheat penny was struck, the United States Mint was operating at full capacity. The demand for coinage was massive. As Americans returned to civilian life, businesses expanded, suburbs grew, and consumer spending surged. Pennies were essential for everyday commerce. Newspapers, candy, public transportation, and gas stations relied heavily on 1 cent coins. And the wheat penny was still the workhorse of American change. In 1951, production took place at 3 mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each leaving its own mark on the coins and its own legacy for collectors. Philadelphia struck hundreds of millions of pennies without a mint mark. Denver added a small D beneath the date, and San Francisco placed an S. Each mint faced different working conditions, different dyewear, and different quality control standards, all of which contribute to the unique character of surviving coins. Today, the metal composition of the 1951 wheat penny tells its own story. During World War II, copper was diverted for military use, leading to the famous steel cents of 1943 and the shellac-coated steel experiment that left a lasting impression on collectors. By 1951, the penny had returned to its traditional bronze alloy, consisting primarily of copper with small amounts of tin and zinc. These cents have a warm reddish-brown tone when well preserved, and over time, exposure to air, moisture, and handling transformed many into deeper brown hues. Collectors today categorize them as red, brown, or brown, with original red examples being significantly rarer and more valuable, especially in higher mint state. Greatest design of the wheat penny remained unchanged in 1951, with Lincoln's bust on the obverse and stylized wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America on the reverse. The wheat stalks symbolized abundance, agriculture, and national prosperity, a fitting message for a country focused on growth and stability after years of rationing and sacrifice above the wheat ears. The motto E pluribus unum reinforced the idea of unity for many, a powerful concept during the early Cold War, when ideological divisions threatened global peace. What truly elevates the 1951 wheat penny from common pocket change to historical artifact is the sheer scale of its production, combined with the stories hidden in its details. Hundreds of millions were minted, yet most were heavily circulated, worn down, lost, melted, or forgotten. Finding a sharply struck example today with full wheat lines, crisp lettering, and minimal contact marks is far more challenging than raw mintage numbers suggest. And this is where collectors begin to appreciate the nuance of the coiners and varieties. Add another layer of intrigue to the 1951 wheat penny. Die cracks, die breaks, repunched mint marks, off center strikes, double dies, and planket flaws can all be found. Though major double dies are scarce, minor doubling and machine doubling are often mistaken for rare varieties, making careful examination essential. Some Denver mint coins show repunched demint marks where the punch was applied more than once, creating a shadow effect under magnification, while San Francisco issues sometimes display weaker strikes due to worn dies, giving Lincoln's hair and the wheat lines a softer appearance. Grading plays a critical role in the value and desirability of the 1951 wheat penny. Circulated examples are plentiful and affordable, serving as entry points for new collectors, but uncirculated pieces, especially those certified by professional grading services, can command significant premiums, particularly in red condition, where original mint luster survives untouched by decades of handling. A blazing red 1951 penny with sharp strike and clean surfaces is a true survivor, a coin that somehow avoided the pockets, purses, and cash registers of a growing nation. Beyond the technical aspects, the 1951 wheat penny connects directly to everyday American life of the early 1950s. This was the era of black and white television, roadside diners, jukeboxes, and the dawn of rock and roll. Families drove new cars filled with optimism while worrying about nuclear drills and international conflict. Children collected pennies in jars. Newspapers cost a few cents, and a single wheat penny could still buy small treats, making these coins deeply woven into the fabric of daily experience for collectors today. The 1951 wheat penny represents both accessibility and depth. It is common enough to be found in old collections and rolls, yet complex enough to reward serious study. It invites beginners with its affordability and challenges advanced numismatists with condition, rarity, and subtle varieties. It serves as a bridge between history, economics, art, and metallurgy, and it stands near the end of the wheat cent era, which would conclude in 1958, making it part of the final chapter of a beloved design. As you hold, or imagine holding a 1951 wheat penny, you are not just looking at a piece of copper, you are touching a moment in time when America stood at the crossroads of tradition and modernity, when Lincoln's image continued to guide the nation through uncertainty, and when even the smallest coin carried the weight of national identity. This is why the 1951 wheat penny matters. This is why collectors still search for it, study it, and treasure it. And this is why this humble 1-cent coin deserves an entire deep dive, a full story, and a long, careful look, because sometimes the smallest objects tell the biggest stories. Imagine holding a small brown coin in your hand, a simple 1-cent piece that most people would ignore without a second thought. Yet this single penny carries the weight of American history, ambition, war recovery, and the end of an era. This is the story of the 1958 wheat penny, the final chapter of one of the most beloved coin designs ever struck by the United States Mint, a coin born in the shadow of world wars, shaped by economic booms and busts, and quietly removed from history just as America was stepping into a bold modern future. This penny is not just copper, it is the last heartbeat of the wheat cent series, a design that had been in the pockets of Americans for nearly half a century, from the horse-drawn wagons of the early 1900s to the jet age of the late 1950s, and today we are going to uncover everything about it, why it was made, how it was struck, who used it, what was happening in America at the time, and why collectors all over the world still search through old jars, rolls, and inherited collections hoping to find the right one, because some 1958 wheat pennies are common, some are scarce, and one variety in particular has become one of the most legendary modern Lincoln cent rarities ever known. To understand the 1958 wheat penny, you have to go back to the beginning of the Lincoln cent itself in 1909, when the United States decided for the first time to place a real person on a circulating coin. President Abraham Lincoln, chosen to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth, sculpted by Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB would later become famous in their own right. The reverse design featured two simple wheat ears framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, symbolizing prosperity, agriculture, and the backbone of the American nation. For decades, this design traveled through history, witnessing World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, and the rebuilding of a nation. And by the time we reach 1958, the wheat penny had already served Americans for 49 years. The America of 1958 was a nation in transition. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. The Cold War dominated headlines. The space race was heating up after the Soviet launch of Sputnik. Suburban neighborhoods were expanding. Televisions were becoming household staples. Rock and roll was changing culture, and prosperity was on the rise after the hardships of earlier decades. Yet at the same time, the United States Mint was preparing to say goodbye to the wheat reverse, because 1958 would be the final year it would ever be produced in regular circulation, making every 1958 wheat penny historically significant. By default, in 1958, Lincoln cents were struck at two mints, Philadelphia and Denver. The Philadelphia Mint produced coins with no mint mark, while the Denver Mint struck coins with a small d below the date on the obverse. Both were made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, the same traditional bronze alloy that had been used for decades before wartime. Steel cents temporarily interrupted production in 1943. The sound, weight, and feel of a 1958 wheat penny is the same familiar sensation. Generations of Americans recognized a solid, honest coin meant to circulate and be spent without a second thought. The mintage numbers tell an important story. Philadelphia struck over 252 million 1958 wheat pennies, while Denver produced more than 800 million, making the 1958 wheat penny one of the highest mintage wheat cents ever made. These numbers explain why many examples are still found today in circulated condition, yet mintage alone does not tell the whole story, because condition, rarity, varieties, and minting errors play a massive role in collector value. The design itself remains classic and dignified. On the obverse, Abraham Lincoln faces right with strong defined features, his coat crisp and his expression thoughtful. The word liberty appears behind him, and the motto "In God We Trust" arches above the date. 1958 appears to the right, and on Denver coins the D mint mark rests just below the date. On the reverse, the iconic wheat ears stretch upward on both sides, framing the denomination and national name with E pluribus unum at the top, a design that feels almost nostalgic even to those who never lived during its circulation years. But what truly elevates the 1958 wheat penny into legendary territory is the existence of one of the most famous Lincoln cent errors ever discovered, the 1958 doubled die obverse. This variety features strong, dramatic doubling on the date and lettering especially noticeable on the word liberty and the date itself. This is not a minor shift, but bold, clear doubling that can be seen with the naked eye, making it one of the most visually striking doubled dies in the entire series. And unlike many error coins that surface in larger numbers, the 1958 doubled die obverse is incredibly rare, with only a handful of confirmed examples known to exist. The discovery of the 1958 doubled die sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Collectors who had long considered the year common suddenly realized a hidden treasure could exist in old collections, and dealer inventories. Prices skyrocketed, with examples selling for tens of thousands and in high grade even surpassing six figures, making it one of the most valuable Lincoln cent errors ever recorded and cementing the 1958 wheat penny as a year that demands attention beyond errors. Condition is everything for collectors. Most 1958 wheat pennies were heavily circulated, meaning they show where flattening of Lincoln's hair, weak details on the wheat ears, and surface marks from decades of use, yet uncirculated examples, especially those with original red mint luster, are far scarcer than mintage. Numbers suggest because copper is sensitive to handling air and moisture, coins that retain their bright red color are classified as red, while those that have partially toned are red-brown. And fully toned examples are brown, and the value difference between these categories can be dramatic. A common circulated 1958 wheat penny might only be worth a few cents, yet a sharply struck and circulated red example can command significant premiums, especially from Philadelphia, where high-quality strikes are more challenging to find. And for Denver coins, collectors look closely at strike sharpness because the massive mintage often resulted in weaker details. Coins with full sharp wheat lines and strong Lincoln features are far more desirable. The end of the wheat penny in 1958 was not accidental. The United States Mint was preparing for a major redesign in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. The reverse would be changed to the Lincoln Memorial, marking a shift toward a more modern, symbolic America and leaving the agricultural imagery of the past behind, making the 1958 wheat penny the final link between early 20th century America and the modern coinage era for collectors. The 1958 wheat penny represents closure. It is the last year of a beloved design, the final opportunity to complete a full wheat cent date set, and a reminder of nearly 50 years of American history struck in copper and passed from hand to hand. It connects the farmer, the factory worker, the soldier, the shopkeeper, and the child who once bought candy with a single cent. Today, searching through rolls, jars, estate collections, and dealer boxes for 1958 wheat pennies is about more than value. It is about discovery, about holding the last wheat penny ever made and wondering where it has been, whose pockets it passed through, and what moments of history it quietly witnessed. And somewhere out there, perhaps still undiscovered, is another 1958 double die waiting to rewrite someone's life story, which is why this coin continues to captivate collectors decades after it vanished from circulation, and why the 1958 wheat penny is not just a coin, but the final chapter of a true American numismatic legend.